So the first month that I had a renter move out and I didn't have the money to cover the mortgage myself, then like that's when the house of cards fell. And that's when like then I had defaulted on both my loans. And so then because I had already defaulted, I moved back into one of those properties. And so then it took like 9 months, I think, for us to get the short sale paperwork to go through. Looking back, I'm really grateful that I had this role model who normalized the idea of multiple streams of income and not just like throwing my fist up in the air at the man and saying, man, if only my boss would give me more money with my W-2 job, then life would be better. Like I saw it modeled for me that like you can go out and you can hustle and you can create extra money for yourself. You don't need to wait for somebody to give it to you.
Welcome, millionaires and future millionaires. You're listening to the Millionaires Unveiled podcast, the show where you'll hear the stories and interviews of everyday millionaires. We'll unveil their decisions, their strategies, and their portfolio allocation. Now to your host, Jace Mattinson.
Welcome to the Millionaires Unveiled podcast. This is episode number 331. Stace, how's it going? What's going on in your world?
Going pretty well over here. We had a fun little last family trip as a family of 5 before I'm on a travel ban per the belly. So yeah, fun little Disney cruise this weekend, and I've had a lot of the economics of Mickey Mouse on my mind this weekend.
Yeah, no kidding. It's amazing what that mouse has done for children across the world, and including our own. At any rate, I don't want to get into the details of the economics of Mickey Mouse, but definitely learned that the cruise price is just the price of admission, and but it's fun. Good memories. A little housekeeping. If you'd like to be on the show, send us an email, millionairesunveiled@gmail.com. We'll get back with you and get you on the schedule. Got the schedule open up for a lot of 2024 already, so got some great guests lined up and hoping to get some more in the pipeline as well. This week, we have Jeff. In fact, on Thursday last week, we just released his episode that Clark and I recorded a couple years ago of him when he was not quite a millionaire. And this is his episode where he is doing his $1 million haul. Jeff has quite the story of coming... Jeff has quite the story of coming from a personal financial crash, so to speak, dealing with the '08 fallout, and yeah, has risen to millionaire status in less than a decade. He's in his, I guess he says he's about to turn 44. So without any further delay, let's get right into the episode with Jeff. Jeff, do you want to just give us a little about your background and what you're up to now?
Sure. Yeah. I had a rags to riches story, I would say. I lost everything in the 2008 market crash. I had a house, I had a condo. I lost both of those because I didn't really know what I was doing. I also was getting out of the military at the time. So I found myself unemployed, trying to start my own business and really struggling to keep my head above water in San Diego, which is, I think, recently named the most expensive cost of living in the country based on our average salary. So that was 2008, 2010. I landed a government job and had a little bit of stability. And I wasn't going to take that for granted because I had already been just scraping by. And so when I got some financial stability, then I still kept a low overhead and I still was living like a college student with 2 roommates and keeping my expenses within check, driving a used car for, I think it ended up being like 16 years until I finally upgraded to a new car, which was last year. And, I just kept plugging away. And earlier this year, about a month ago, I finally hit the 1 million mark. And $1 million holla, woohoo! It's
nice.
So I started a blog and I started an Instagram account just because I felt like, I was really down in the dumps and I really felt like, I don't know if there's a way out of this. At one point I considered living in my car. Like I thought, I've got a gym membership, I could really save a lot of money if I just showered at the gym and then I slept in my car. And it was just like crazy to look back and to think that I was like making that an option to save money because there was like nothing coming in when I was a freelancer in like 2008, 2009. So I share openly about my numbers, my story, just with the hope that maybe it will help somebody out there if somebody's having a hard time right now.
Awesome. No, this is so many good. I mean, obviously, you came on the show. We did a millionaire or a interview prior to you getting to this point, and so it really does demonstrate kind of the snowball effect of how quickly this has started to happen for you. So let's dive into the allocation real quick. $1 million hit net worth just recently. How is it all allocated?
Sure. Let's see. My 401k, I've got about 405,000 in there. So we'd say that's like 40% of everything. I've got $303,000 in a high yield savings account because I have a rental property that I sold recently, which we can get into later. And so that's in a high yield savings account, earning over 5%. For anybody listening, please don't keep a large sum of money in a checking or savings account. Please put it in a high yield savings account. Let's see, I've got $193,000 in equity in my primary residence. I do count that as part of my net worth. I know it's controversial, but because I'm in San Diego and I plan on always having my primary residence generate some income for me, like if I'm traveling, doing slow travel, I'm fine letting people rent my place. So in my mind, I'm always going to have my home as a source of revenue. And so that's why I count my home equity in my primary residence toward my net worth. I've got about $27,000 in Kelley Blue Book value in my car. You want me to give a shout out on what that is? Or we can get to that later. Let's see, $22,000 in I bonds, which I'm probably going to sell soon and move that into my high yield savings account. I've got $16,000 in a Roth IRA that's just set to automatically max out. Buy shares of an index fund every month. Got, let's see, $10,000 in cash and a couple sinking funds. And then I have $5,800, almost $6,000 in a health savings account. And most of that is in the investment portion. I don't have a lot in cash right now because of a recent surgery on my Achilles.
Nice, man. So you got quite the diversification. So let's go back. High yield savings account. Do you mind sharing when you're getting over 5% on that?
Yeah, one of those is at 5.2%. The other one's 5.1. There's a website that I happened to stumble across called savebetter.com. And it's like an intermediary where it will aggregate various high yield savings accounts. And so you can just sort by like which ones have the highest yield. And so I made sure in the fine print for each one that I invested in that they were both FDIC insured. And because I have more than $250,000, that's the max that you'll get insured by the FDIC. I have them broken down with most of them in the one that's getting 5.2%. And then the other one, the rest of the money's in the 5.1% account. But yeah, that's just through savebetter.com.
Nice. So you recently sold the condo. How did you decide to do that and why?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I had my condo that was solely being used as a short-term rental on Airbnb. I had gone through some different changes with that where I started out self-managing and then I was like running the numbers during tax season one year. And I was like, my overhead or my cash flow, it really isn't that great. So I think I'm going to try a professional short-term rental property management company. I tried working with them and then my profits went up, my expenses went down some, but then, it just seemed like the market kept changing so much with like, Airbnb kind of fell out of favor. The market got oversaturated. And even though I had just spent $1,000 on a license to do a short-term rental in San Diego, it just felt like I was starting from scratch where like the demand had dropped so much. And I was like, I started reading up on a book on medium-term rentals and I had good luck with travel nurses in the past. But honestly, I think that I have just gotten to the point in my life where I'm going to turn 44 later this month. I got to the point where it was like, I just don't have the energy to hustle and try to like keep pivoting with this rental property. Like I'm at the point where I need to just enjoy life and reduce my stress. And I really don't need to have as many doors as possible and have passive income from as many doors as possible. So it was just like, it was a conscientious move that I'm just going to pay the capital gains on this. pay the piper to the tax man, and then just like walk away and have some cash to sit on. And, I'm single now. And when I get to the point where I'm dating somebody and we want to buy a place together, all right, well, I've got that money ready to go.
So walk us through, you lost everything. How did you rebuild, first of all? And what is it that you settled on? You mentioned freelancing. So what is it that you do? Are you still doing that? Did you go back to that when the market kind of recovered?
I got my undergrad degree in cinema production, and on a side note, like my stepdad, when I got accepted to USC Film School. It's like one of the top film schools, but he was like, "What kind of job are you going to get doing that kind of work? You should become an engineer, Jeff. That's like a lot more solid career path." But I did pay for school with the ROTC scholarship, and so after graduating college, I was already committed to serve at least 4 years as a naval officer. So after I finished my time in the military, then it was like, all right, well, what am I going to do now? And I thought, well, I'll follow my passion, because it didn't seem like a lot of people were hiring during the 2008 recession. So I'll just follow my passion and go into become a freelance video producer, because that's what I got my degree in. And there was like hardly any work at that time, because for one, video marketing was like such a new thing. I'm trying to sell the value of it to people, but it's like way ahead of its time. And then also at that time, there was just like small businesses had no kind of advertising budget. And so we're all like going to networking events, trying to meet each other to drum up business, but it's like nobody has money to like really refer business to anybody. So it was like a really tough time. At one point, I think I only made like $10,000 to $12,000 in a year, and so and that's in San Diego, where it's like high cost of living. So I think the only thing that actually like made it possible for me to scrape by and like survive those lean years was that I had a house and a condo, both of which I had moved out of, and I had renters in both of them. And I didn't have any kind of like emergency fund for myself or for the properties. So the first month that I had a renter move out and I didn't have the money to cover the mortgage myself, then that's when the house of cards fell. And that's when then I had defaulted on both my loans. And so then because I had already defaulted, I moved back into one of those properties. And so then it took like 9 months, I think, for us to get the short sale paperwork to go through. So that was kind of like a blessing in disguise that I was able to live in one of my properties rent free for almost a year while we were waiting to figure out how are we going to get this thing offloaded. And so, those were the very lean years where I was just living month to month. I had cashed out all the money that was in my 401k from my time in the Navy. I had started doing credit card cash advances just to have a little bit extra to live off of every month. And it was I was just waiting for a lifeline to come out. When am I going to have a break? So it was very dire. And looking back, I really should have just said, all right, I need to pack up my bags, move back to Illinois, where I'm from, stay with my parents, figure out what I'm going to do next. But it's I had tunnel vision of just I just need to survive this next month and figure out what's going to happen the following month. And as a freelance video producer, I always felt this pressure, I need to stay competitive to land freelancing gigs over other freelancers. So I was always taking free classes to learn graphic design and web design and photography, different skill sets. And so I just happened to hear about a 4-month training for veterans. And part of that training was to help people get employed after they were done. And so I had never even looked online to look at government jobs. And after this 4-month training, they sent me a link to a usajobs.gov announcement for a federal job. I applied, and I think it was within 6 months, I started at my job that I'm at now. And so that was 2010. So now I'm doing video production. That's part of my job. It's my title is audiovisual production specialist. I work for the Border Patrol's San Diego communications office. And so we've got people who do public affairs in the office. And then I'm on the other half of the office that does multimedia production. So we create a lot of content for the Instagram account for San Diego. And then we do like internal messaging announcements to employees. But it's really a dream job because it has the security of government where I don't have to worry about having like 6 months or more of an emergency fund in case I lost my job. It's just like we've got job stability, pension, healthcare, and then it's creative. So it's like the type of work that I always wish I was able to do in the Navy. Now I have that. And I don't have to go on deployments. I don't have to move every 2 years like I did in the Navy. Like I actually get to stay put and grow roots here in San Diego. And so going through all those hardships of being borderline homeless, once I had that stability with a solid government job, then it was like I still had that frugality muscle was still like so tightly wound that it was like I could not just like, I don't even think the whole idea of lifestyle creep where you start spending more money just because you're making more money, that wasn't even like an option for me because I still was like in survival mode. Even when I got the new job, it was like, I'm going to keep having roommates. I'm going to keep driving a used car. I'm going to keep looking, how can I make more money and save more money? Like I still felt like it could all get ripped away from me at any point because I did have a 1-year probationary period. And then they say like, then there's like a 3-year period. So I was like, I think I was still always like not wanting to assume that I was safe, that I was secure and stable. And I was always like, just feeling like I need to make sure that like, I don't get back in that position where I was not able to afford to live. And that's just such a horrible feeling for me and for my dog at the time, not having enough money to like buy her dog, like enough dog food where like her ribs started showing. And it sucks when your choices affect other people. You know, that's the worst part. And so I think that was part of my wake up call is like, I can't ever get myself or me and the people who depend on me. I can't ever get myself in that position again.
Wow, what a volatile time you were in. And it's like you grabbed onto this lifesaver and climbed aboard and then got control of the ship. And now you are smooth sailing and in such a happy place. So how long did it take you? You lost those two properties and how long did it take you to be able to buy property again and feel like you had that stability?
Yeah. So I got the new job in 2010. I think it was around 2015 is when I bought a 1-bedroom condo in San Diego it was a rental from the very beginning. I put 20% down and I wasn't going to let my cost of living go up. I was going to keep renting where my rent was so low. So that was a rental all along. And then let's see, it was then just this year, 2023, when I hit a million in net worth. So I'd say about 13 years that it took me to go from actually negative $10,000 because I had the credit card debt from those cash advances to go from negative $10,000 to 1 million was like 13 years.
So anyone listening here can know that if you are negative 10K right now, in 13 years from now, you can do this too. And this is achievable. Thanks for walking us through that tumultuous time period and how you really came back on top.
Yeah. I should note that I was able to like research different benefits that were available to me. And so like I had heard about different things like that veterans will kind of find out are wrong with them, like medically. So I did an exit physical, and I think that I came out of the military maybe like 30% disabled, and that might have been like $400 a month. And then as like different things were happening with my body, like I had back problems, I had like an issue where my left arm started going numb after doing like some handstand push-ups from like some compressed discs in my neck. I kept going back and filing for like, all right, I think there's more stuff wrong with me. So that was something that I want to make sure I disclose, because I think I was getting an extra $400 to $500 a month when I first got out of the military. And then that increased to, I want to say it was closer to like $1,200 in like 2017. And then it bumped up again. Now it's like closer to 2,100. That just happened in the last year. So I haven't had like, it's basically the equivalent of like a third paycheck that I get that's tax free. And so that's something that really, like, the more significant payments has happened most recently. I like to think that even though that benefit is only available to military vets who have some kind of disability, I do like to think that there's other benefits that are out there, that it's almost like representative of other things, that, like, all it took was for me to finally do the legwork, talk to other people, and find out what kind of things are out there. And so I think, maybe it's not a VA loan, maybe it's an FHA loan, maybe it's a Good Neighbor Next Door program if somebody's in law enforcement. I like to think that, like, there are equivalent things out there in every industry if somebody just, does the networking, finds out what those opportunities are. And so, yeah, I've been very fortunate with that. So that's kind of like the equivalent of almost like 3 paychecks a month instead of 2.
Well, thank you for your service. We really appreciate all of our veterans and the sacrifices that you've made. Have you been able to take advantage of any other VA loans or the like throughout your journey as well?
Yeah. So that was kind of part of my initial story in 2005 when I bought my first condo, which I later lost. I bought it with a VA loan with 0 down. And then the market was like on an upswing. So 2 years later, I had $100,000 in equity on that first condo that I had bought. So I was like, oh, well, I'll just buy a house too. I want to be a dual homeowner because my ego wanted to say I was a dual homeowner. And so then I took that $100,000 in a home equity line of credit, bought a house for $500,000. And then it was like when the market crashed, that's when I lost both properties. So I like to think that, like, my lesson learned was I didn't really know what I was doing. And I was told, like, oh, well, it's free money. The VA loan, it's like 0 down. So it's kind of like free money. So, okay, well, real estate never goes down. You never lose in real estate. So I was just like, okay, well, this is what people are doing. And so, like, after losing everything, now with real estate, I'm like very much like, I run the numbers. I make sure everything makes sense. I measure twice, cut once kind of thing, measure 3 times really, because I want to make sure if I buy a property, like, is it going to work as a short-term rental? No. Is it going to work as a medium-term rental? Okay. Is it going to work as a long-term rental? Like, I try to have like plan A, B, C. And then, because then I like to do buy and hold ideally. So then when I move out of my place, then it can become a rental. And then even if I get myself in the same position where, let's say I have to move out for some reason, if I hit dire straits, well, I want to make sure that any property I buy will at least break even with renters. And so, like, those are the kind of numbers that I run now, is like, always make sure that it's going to make financial sense. Don't fall in love with some house and let my emotions run the decision. Like, make sure my brain is involved and the logic is involved and not just the emotions. So to answer your question, yes, I did use the VA loan, but then I lost the VA loan because I had to short sell the property. So I'm told that I think I still have access to the VA loan, but it's not the full, like, benefit. I think I have to provide like 7% down. So it's not as good of a benefit as it used to be. But the other military or veteran benefit that I've taken advantage of was the GI Bill, because the GI Bill, they will give you housing allowance for every month that you're a full-time student. So that was another thing that gave me a big bump to get to $1 million net worth in 13 years. I went back to school. I got 3 different master's degrees because I had 3 years of benefit. And so those three different masters, for me, it was like about $2,000 a month in the housing allowance, which is tax-free. So, which is worth more if it was actually like paid in a salary form. So $2,000, is like $24,000 a year. And I got 3 degrees. So I like to think that was like $72,000 that I got just because I was willing to find out I've got this opportunity available to me, but how do I juggle this being a full-time employee and become a full-time student? So I needed to really like figure that part out. And then I needed to commit, like, mentally, how am I going to do this? How am I going to get off work, then go to class, then make time for homework, do projects and finals and write papers on weekends? Like, I had to mentally get myself ready where it's like, I need to almost like have 0 life while I'm doing this. And I think it was still rooted in that whole, like, that scarcity period where I lost everything.
Listen up, millionaires and soon to be millionaires. Do you ever buy anything online? I know I do. In fact, some of my favorite places to purchase are online. Do you know some of those favorite places that you buy from? There's some amazing websites out there, and many of them are powered by Shopify. Shopify is the global commerce platform that helps you sell at every stage of your business. From the launch your online shop stage to the first real life store stage and all the way in between to we just hit $1 million order stage. Yep, Shopify is there to help you grow. Whether you're selling shipping supplies or promoting productivity programs, Shopify helps you sell everywhere. From their all-in-one e-commerce platform to their personal in-person POS system, wherever and whatever you're selling, Shopify's got you covered. Shopify helps you turn browsers into buyers with the internet's best converting checkout, up to 36% better compared to other leading e-commerce platforms. And sell more with less effort, thanks to Shopify Magic, your AI-powered all-star. What I love about Shopify is no matter how big you want to grow, Shopify gives you everything you need to take control of your business to the next level. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/unveiled, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/unveiled now to grow your business, no matter what stage you're in. That's shopify.com/unveiled. And thanks again to Shopify for supporting today's episode.
I was like, I can't afford to let an opportunity pass me by, because the GI Bill, when I got out, we only had 15 years until it expired. And I was like 10 years past the point of getting out of the military. And I was like, it's do or die. Like, I have to get this started now before I run out of time. I think that was like driving me, like, yes, this is going to suck, but I just need to embrace the suck. And I need to just know that there's something better waiting for me on the other side. And so that was another like big boost of like, instead of me only relying on my income from my W-2 job, like I was willing to put in the sweat equity and essentially work 2 jobs by being a full-time student while I was working full-time for 3 years while I got those 3 degrees.
Wow, man, what a journey. So, Jeff, where do you go from here at this point? Do you have a target net worth or passive income goal or lifestyle goal or anything like that?
Yeah, I think it's a lifestyle goal, to be honest, Jace. Because I have a little bit of money from VA disability and I have a pension when I retire from my government job, I really don't feel any kind of pressure that I need more passive income. So like having rental property doesn't feel necessary to me. I feel like I will have all of my basic needs met just with those 2 streams of income. And I'm still maxing out my retirement accounts. So I feel like even if I didn't have those 2 streams of income, I'm projected to have somewhere between like $1.5 million to $2 million to $2 million just in my retirement accounts by the time I retire. So if I was using the 4% rule, I could probably live off of that if that was my only stream of income. So because, just big picture, back of the napkin math, I know like my basic needs are going to be covered by those first 2 streams of income. My 401k, that's going to be just like extra fun money. When I move out of this current place I'm in and make it a travel nurse rental, that'll be extra income. So I really don't have a net worth goal anymore. Hitting 1 million to do the $1 million holler was cool just because I like to have milestone goals along the way. But I knew that wasn't really going to be like the end all be all. It actually gave me a sense of pressure because I was like, as I was getting closer to that $1 million mark, I would check mint.com every month. And as I got closer, I was like, man, if I hit $1 million and I'm not like, my life isn't like everything is in order and I'm not like happy in all aspects of my life, then I think I didn't hit fire. I hit like what they call dumpster fire, where it's like, yeah, I've got the money, but I've got like nothing else going right in my life. So it was like almost a sense of pressure that I should probably get my life in order. So like when I get to that point, like I'm a little bit not a hot mess. So net worth goal, no, I have no net worth goal. Passive income goal or monthly income goal, not really. I think I have about $5,000 a month take home right now from my W-2 job. If I throw in the money from VA disability, I've got $7,000 a month in take home. So I guess, I could say it would be nice to just have at least that same amount every month in retirement so I can still have the same quality of life when I retire. But I feel very comfortable, very confident that money is not going to be a concern. And so I feel very blessed that like I put in that work of that sweat equity on the front end, that now I can just like worry about all the other things out there that I can worry about, health, family, friends. Like money doesn't have to be one of those worries anymore. So like in terms of what am I going to aim for next? It's not financial. At this point, it's more like, now that I'm not having to burn the candle at both ends, being a full-time student while I'm working, my goal is like, I want to plan as many trips as I can. I want to travel hack. I want a credit card hack. I would love to go on like one trip every month at least. And so I'm just like, this whole year has just been like going down the bucket list of all the places that I've always wanted to go, starting in the US. And then eventually, I think next year I'll have some more international trips that I'll kind of throw into the mix.
Awesome. Is there a certain age or plan for retirement or moving into kind of more of the lifestyle design where you're not working full time?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'll be 44 later this month. I just got a promotion. And so with the new promotion, I need to fill that role as a GS13 for at least a year. So my whole thought is, I really like where I work. I like the people I work with, but they said with the promotion, I need to come into the office every day. I had to give up my 2 days of telework every week. So I just tell myself, all right, well, I'll pay my dues for 52 weeks. I will go into the office every day, but my mind is on like, what's the next step for my lifestyle design? So, in a year, then I'll be available to apply for, maybe there's another GS13 position, or maybe there's a GS14 position that's fully remote. And then I'll have the opportunity to do like slow travel, because I love the idea of like just being a digital nomad, or being able to, maybe I'm dating somebody who lives in a different city, and then I can kind of bounce back and forth between San Diego and another city, but not having to just have my life limited because I need to drive to an office 5 days a week. So I'm kind of toying with that idea. In a year, will I want to kind of keep a 9 to 5 schedule, or will I want to travel more? I have a retirement countdown app on my phone that counts down how many years until I'm retirement eligible. So that's either 11 years if they honor the rule of 55, or it's 13 years if I need to wait till I'm 57. So that's kind of the next stage. And I think that when I hit 55, because I'll have more than 30 years in, I think that then I'll be eligible for what's called phased retirement, where then you can work like 50% of the time. And I really like that idea, where, again, like milestone goals, I like having something that like, what's next? Like, what's the next thing to look forward to? So phased retirement would allow me to like work for 1 week in the office and then have a week off. So like, I would love to just like maybe front load that, where it's like, the last week of the pay period I work, the first week of the next pay period I work. So I work for like 2 weeks straight, and then I could travel for 2 weeks straight. And then essentially kind of like start dipping my toe into that like semi-retirement life. And I would do that for 2 years. Yeah. And then I would retire fully at 57.
Interesting. So I want you to speak a little bit, if you don't mind, what it's like kind of doing this, building this in a high cost of living area. I've had several requests and people write in about this over the years. How do you do it in a high cost of living area? Well, here you go, Jeff, working, government, post-military, got a pension, which is obviously very valuable, and we'll get into that in a second, but you've done it. How?
Yeah. Well, the biggest expenses, I'm sure everybody who watches or listens to your show, they know housing and car. Those are the two biggest. And then, food is number 3. And food, it seems like, has just like doubled in price since like post-COVID. So it's very easy to just like, if you're keeping up with the Joneses, or if you're just living like a typical American lifestyle, it's very easy to have your food budget just be astronomical between like just the cost of not making food at home, and then the cost of like food delivery services. And that's my weakness. Like I'm speaking from somebody who like doesn't cook a lot. And so like I will go out to eat a lot, and usually it's fast casual places, but still that is kind of like my Achilles heel. Now for housing, that's usually the biggest expense, where like, I think the average rental for like a 1-bedroom in San Diego right now is starting at like $2,500 a month. And if I was going to just be average and just keep up with the Joneses, I would probably say, oh, well, that's how much everybody's paying. Well, I'm just going to pay $2,500 a month. But when I was renting, it was 10 years that I was renting a 3-bedroom. And when we first moved in, that 3-bedroom was, I think it was $1,600. And so like, it was like a good deal at the time, but then split between 3 people, I think my rent was like between $600 and $800 a month. So like, I already knew like I'm paying half or less of what the average person is paying in a nice walkable neighborhood in San Diego. And so like, that was my number one, is like, I'm not going to just keep up with the Joneses and have an apartment that's super expensive. And so like, if somebody is, let's say a married couple, both people are working, a lot of people will say like, have maybe one of those spouses save their entire paycheck and then just try to live off of the other person's paycheck. If you are married or in a relationship where you live with somebody, it's kind of nice, because then your roommate is somebody that you actually get along with. You're sharing a space with somebody that you like.
Most of the time.
Yeah. But then, that's the downside of being single, is that, all right, well, now you're going to have roommates that you may or may not get along with them. But then the positive, the pro side of being single is like, well, when you're single, that's like and you don't have kids yet, that's your time to like live scrappy, like to live that college student lifestyle. And you are in control of your own destiny, because you're not having to make decisions for an entire household. So I would say you just need to have that mindset that like, I'm not going to just follow the beat of what everybody else is doing. But if you have this bigger goal, this bigger dream, that you see something on the other side of that finish line that's going to be worth hustling and kind of being mindful, making frugal choices. Like, if you have that vision, then I think it'll be easier to just pass on those things that seem like, oh, that's kind of pricey. Like paying $20 for a couple mimosas, like at brunch, like that seems like a lot of money, but everybody else is doing it. But you can kind of start to have those goals where it's like, yeah, it's just $20 would be the average kind of the thought process. But then you need to have a better goal for that $20. If you know that $20 is going to be part of a down payment of a rental property, or if it's going to be part of a Roth IRA that you're maxing out, and you know what that Roth IRA is going to grow to with compound interest in 10, 20, 30 years, you'll have a higher goal that you'll know that money can be better utilized. But you have to kind of run those numbers, and you need to have that vision first to say, I'm not going to keep up with the Joneses. I'm not going to have an apartment that's super expensive to myself. I'm not going to drive a new car just because my friends are buying a new car every couple of years. Like, you have to have that vision first. And a lot of people will say that in the FIRE community. They'll say like, it starts with mindset. And I think that's kind of what they're getting at, is like, you need to figure out with your own mindset why your goal of financial independence, why that is more important, and why that is more motivating to you than just having some temporary pleasure in the short term of buying that thing for some retail therapy.
I love that. That reminds me of Simon Sinek's, start with why. And it's something that I've used in my own line of work as I do nutrition counseling, is what's your why? If your why is something really superficial, it's not going to take you very far. But
yes,
you've really developed a very strong muscle for delayed gratification. If you have an app that has a countdown for 13 or 11 years from now, that is someone in delayed gratification for a greater goal.
So real quick on the pension, I mean, you didn't put that in your net worth, but clearly that has some value provided that you finish out, the years of service, correct?
Correct. Yeah. I'm not even though I work for a law enforcement agency, I am a professional staff member. So my pension is a smaller percent than a law enforcement person. Law enforcement officers in my agency, they get like 1.8% for every year served. For me, it's just 1% per year served, which I'm not going to balk at, because I know how many few jobs have pensions. But I will have, with my 6 years of the Navy that I've already bought back those years, that plus my time working for Border Patrol, it'll end up being 32 years when I'm eligible to retire. So that'll be 32% of my salary.
Wow. So that's nothing to squawk at. I mean, that's real money.
Right.
Good for you.
Yeah. For anybody who's ever kind of considered a federal government job, they're all posted to usajobs.gov, and you can like check a box if you want one that's fully remote, if that interests you. I will say that it can be very competitive. And so like if you are a military vet, a lot of companies or agencies, they'll kind of look only at the military vets first and give them veterans preference before looking at the rest of the applicants. But the federal government also offers what's called, or at least in my agency, since law enforcement, a Social Security supplement. So from the time you retire until age 62, you get 75% of what would normally be paid out from Social Security. And that's not paid by the Social Security Administration, but it's paid by the Office of Personnel Management. So they're just kind of like, because they figure people who work in law enforcement, their bodies break down a lot younger. So then they're kind of forced to retire early. And so then that helps them kind of bridge that gap from when they retire. Some retire as young as 50 until age 62. So that's another little perk that I know is going to be there, but I don't really kind of do the math, or I don't really plan for it the same way that like Social Security is like something that I don't like to include it in my calculations, because I don't want to have the rug ripped out from under me if it ends up being like some smaller percent of what I'm expecting.
Sure. I'm really impressed by how much you know about the benefits available to you as a veteran, also just within your government job. Is there something for other veterans? Is there a person that helps walk people through the benefits that are available, or is it just word of mouth and talking to other people?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, they've got some different podcasts and blogs that are specifically designed for military vets. So I think that if somebody is interested, if their interest gets piqued, if they just do a Google search for like military veteran fire or military veteran fire blog podcast, they will find things out there that's geared toward them. That's just going to be a wealth of resources, because there can be so much stuff out there that it's hard to navigate all the red tape. But I will tell you, the same way that I discovered your podcast, and as a quick plug for Millionaires Unveiled, your podcast is the only one that I've actually listened to, starting at the very first episode all the way through to like present day. Because I think I wanted to achieve that whole like Tony Robbins, like you want to be the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. Like your voices were like in my ears as I was walking around, walking the dog, walking to class, taking a walk during my breaks, driving to work. Because I was just so fascinated by hearing these stories. And it was almost like I wanted to just like average out. Like I wanted to have a sense of what is the common thread that all these different people from different walks of life, like I want it to just kind of wash over me and assimilate into me, where then I will kind of have this sense of like a spidey sense. If something seems like it's off and it's a little different, and somebody is promoting something that's not what all the other millionaires are doing, I wanted to have that kind of like sixth sense about that. And I mentioned that because I think Millionaires Unveiled was the type of content that I was like really wanting to hone in on. And so the reason why I mentioned that is because if there's a veteran who's also interested in fire, all you have to do is Google veteran fire blogger, veteran fire podcast. You will find something that matches your niche. And that's really what it's all about, is to find some content creator who is similar to you, who you can see yourself in and relate to, and you like the way that they tell their story and share their content. And I think if you just assimilate that content over time, it'll just kind of become second nature to you.
Awesome, Jeff. Thanks for sharing that. Well, let's wrap up with some rapid fire questions. And some of these are different than the first go around, so this will be good.
Let's do it.
What's the most expensive pair of shoes you bought?
Oh man, running shoes are a lot right now. So probably like $150.
Okay. What about the most expensive meal out?
That was also around 150 bucks. That was for me and my best friend after celebrating the $1 million holla.
Nice. Okay. Which restaurant did you go to?
It is a new place. It's like Oaxacan Mexican, in this new like fancy hotel that just got renovated in San Diego, the Lafayette Hotel.
Nice. All right, let's get into the car. Tell us about the car.
Oh yeah, the car. So I am not a car person. I had to do a lot of research of like what's the most recommended, most reliable fire car, not fire friendly, financial independence friendly car. And it was Toyota and Honda were like the two that came up the most. And so I ended up going with a Honda Civic Sport hatchback. And so I love it. It was like $29,000. And it was like, it's sporty, it's fun to drive. The hatchback makes it super utilitarian if I need to throw a bike or a surfboard in it. And I was going to go for hybrid, but last year, like the dealers were wanting to charge such a high like surcharge for hybrids. It was so hard to get them. I was like, all right, well, I'm at the point where I don't really need to pinch pennies anymore. So I'll just kind of give myself a little bit of a splurge by buying a non-hybrid, and it's going to be a fun car. It's going to have like that sporty engine on it. And so I'm kind of surprised that like somebody who's not into cars, like I found my version of like a midlife crisis sports car. It's a Honda Civic still.
I love it. I love it.
Somebody get this guy a hatchback. He's in.
Yeah. What's a key lesson you learned from childhood?
Key lesson from childhood. Oh man. I made a blog post about this once about like the Robert Kiyosaki Rich Dad Poor Dad lessons. My biological dad, he was, I think, more of like just a standard, I'm going to work a W-2 job and that's it. And that's all that I can ever expect for myself. My stepdad, who married my mom, I think I was maybe around 7 or so. So like most of my childhood, was with my stepdad, and he was a lot more entrepreneurial. He was a police officer, but he also had 2 rental properties. He also had a vending machine business. So like he had multiple streams of income. And looking back, I'm really grateful that I had this role model who normalized the idea of multiple streams of income and not just like throwing my fist up in the air at the man and saying, man, if only my boss would give me more money with my W-2 job, then life would be better. Like I saw it modeled for me that like you can go out and you can hustle and you can create extra money for yourself. You don't need to wait for somebody to give it to you.
Awesome. What bucket list experience are you looking forward to?
Oh man, so many, but the one that's coming up soonest is Vancouver. I'm going to fly there for my birthday weekend, and I've wanted to go there for the longest time. And it's really not that far of a flight because it's all West Coast. So I guess I'm kind of surprised that I didn't do it sooner. But yeah, that's going to be the most immediate one on the list.
It's a great city.
Yeah, that's one of our
my
favorite cities.
Oh,
Yep.
Cool.
And Jeff, actually, we talked about this before the show, but I don't think you mentioned it at all through the interview today. How long did it take you to go? You had been interviewed previously by Jason Clark. How long did it take you to go from around 500,000 to $1 million?
Yeah. So I was, another thing that was a big like boost to the trajectory of my path to financial independence was I agreed to take a 1-year work assignment out in DC. And I was collecting per diem for that whole time. And I moved back into my old apartment where I used to be. And then my current condo where I'm at now, I got that rented to a travel nurse. So I was essentially pocketing almost my entire paycheck and getting per diem for like a solid year. And so that was huge for me to get that extra bump. But it was about 2-3 years ago that I was driving out to DC. And I remember I had just taken the time to update all my numbers. And I was like, I updated everything in Mint. Some of the stuff I had to manually input. And I was like around 500,000. And I remember telling my old roommate, my best friend I used to live with, I was like, Dan, I just realized I have $500,000 net worth. And he was just as shocked as I was. And I was like, I can't believe this. It just seems like I'm just kind of plugging away, like very slowly, not seeing a lot of growth because I wasn't really tracking it very closely. And so that was a real like shock to my system. Then I'm working per diem assignment for a full year and seeing this extra huge bump. Then we see this huge bump with the stock market, with real estate. And I just happened to own 2 properties at that point. I had a rental property and a new primary residence. So it's like all of these things happened to work in my favor, kind of like the cash flow game, where it's like I was able to get myself out of the rat race, just living like month to month. But I had these investments, these assets, where it's like I had enough in my 401k. I had 2 properties at that point. It's like I was able to really take advantage of this huge boom that we saw in the economy between the stock market and the real estate market. And so then it almost feels like it happened overnight to go from 500,000 to $1 million, not even 3 years later. And so, I mean, that's what a lot of people say, like it takes the longest to get to the 100,000 mark, but then it like really picks up speed after that. So yeah, like I'm definitely testament to that. And so now I'm kind of looking forward to the point where it's like the average amount that my net worth grows every month, like it's almost like a challenge. Like, all right, if my net worth is growing $20,000 a month on average, let's see, what if I just spend $10,000 traveling? Like then it's still going to keep growing steadily, but like it's almost like, yeah, I could have fun with that.
So do you find yourself tracking it more closely now than you did previous to getting to that $500,000 mark?
So on my Instagram account, the beginning of the month post where I include a screenshot from Mint and I break down in the caption, here's the actual, like, this is where all the money is allocated. That is the post that tends to get the most like likes and comments. And so I feel almost like, well, if people are interested in that and seeing what that is, I wanted to keep posting that until I hit 1 million. But then after hitting 1 million, then it took a dip and now it's like around 981,000. But thanks to Millionaires Unveiled, again, I wasn't planning on being like a promoter of your podcast, but because I've listened,
take it. Jace will take it. I'm just here for fun.
Well, because I've listened to enough episodes, and every time Jace would ask like, well, when did you hit 1 million? And I've heard enough people say, oh, well, they kind of shrug it off and laugh like, well, we first hit 1 million like a year ago or 2 years ago, and then it dipped, and now it's back up, and now it's like way over 1 million. And like, I just have this sense of like security and sense of like confidence that like, it doesn't really matter if the market is going to take a dip, because I've heard enough people who have been in this game way longer than me, who you've already interviewed on your podcast, that they have had it dip below 1 million, and then it always comes back, and it always comes back way more.
Let's go back to a couple of more rapid fire questions. What's the craziest thing that you've ever done to earn money?
Craziest thing I've ever done. I don't think I've gotten all that crazy, but I've been a mystery shopper, and that was fun.
What were you mystery shopping?
I went to a sushi restaurant. I think I went to a store and bought some clothes. It's usually restaurants. And it was kind of exciting because, they comp your meal and then they give you a little bit extra for writing a report and then sending it in. But it made me feel like I was like this secret agent who was like going in and like, hopefully they're not on to me because I'm like really studying their behavior and I'm like making notes on my phone. Like I was convinced that like, if they see me make notes on my phone, they're going to know something's up. And so I was like, I would go into the bathroom and then like make notes on the phone and then come back out. I was like so paranoid that like I'm going to get fired from this job. But
it's funny.
Yeah, that was a fun one.
What's the most fun you've ever had with money?
This is a new question. The most fun I've ever had with money. The first thing that comes to mind for me is I was dating a guy who he's really into Kels, the nice skincare products, and he had some Kels face wash, and he was flying back to Sacramento, and I remember before he got to the gate to board his plane, he was texting me about how he was so upset because his bottle of face wash, which is like, Kels is expensive crap. Stacey, I'm sure you could probably attest to this if you've used them.
I actually have never bought Kels, but I'm familiar with it.
You know the brand. Okay.
Skincare is expensive across the board, but Kels is particularly expensive. Yeah.
Yeah. So they sell it in the fancy bougie malls. And he was so upset that like his bottle of Kels was over the 3.4 ounces or whatever. So he had to give up the new Kels bottle that he had just bought at the security. And so, his phone went dark while he was on the plane. And then by the time he landed, he got a text message from me, and it was a screenshot saying, hey, this is going to be mailed out to you within a few days. And it was not just the small size he had bought. It was like $40 for like the jumbo size. And he was so happy. It was like all of his disappointment and frustration just like got flipped around. And he was like even more happy and excited knowing that like this thing that he thought he had lost, well, he had gotten something even better that was coming to him. And that was like, just the knowing that that was only $40, but like it made such a big difference to somebody who felt like they had this setback. To be able to brighten somebody's day like that. I look forward to being able to do things like that in the future, more and more often. If somebody feels like they got knocked down, sometimes the smallest little thing can just really, brighten their day.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for sharing that. What's a closely held belief that you recently changed?
A closely held belief. So the same way that I have had a vision of like, even though I'm living like a broke college student, but I know I have faith and I have vision that like, it's not going to be like this forever. And I don't care how it looks to other people. I may look like I'm poor or I'm cheap or whatever people might want to say. I know that I'm not going to be in this state forever. I have started applying that toward my personal life also. And even though right now I'm single, even though right now I had to go through some upheaval with like, lost some friends that after the breakup, like I have this sense of confidence that like the place where I'm at right now is not the place where I'm going to be forever. And so I have this vision that like better days are ahead. That's going to be with like relationships, with romantic relationships, with friendships. And it has made me like raise the bar of like, if I feel like I have people in my life who are maybe fake friends, frenemies, whatever, because it's very easy to cut somebody down if somebody feels threatened by you. I heard a quote by somebody that they said, people want to see you doing well. They just don't want to see you doing better than they are. And so I think it's very easy to have people in your life that, they may seem happy for you or they may seem like they're supportive of you, but when push comes to shove, they probably aren't there for you. And so I've been more comfortable being uncomfortable where I may not have plans for the weekend. I may not know who I'm going to be hanging out with when I go on at least one of the 3 trips that I have coming up, but I'm confident that I will make friends along the way and that it's not always going to be a solo journey that I'm taking. Hope that answers the question.
Awesome. Any last words of advice for somebody who's just starting out?
Yeah, I know like the financial independence movement, it gets a bad rap that like they are extremists, that they take it too far. But I think that the FIRE movement has really evolved and there's a lot more nuance. There's a lot more of like, hey, let's have a high quality of life along the way for the whole journey from now up until we hit FIRE. And so I've really embraced the idea that everybody has a different timeline. I started out with a very aggressive timeline of wanting to have a 50% or higher savings rate so I could like get myself out of this feeling of scarcity and get stability as quickly as possible. But, just because I did it in 13 years doesn't mean that that's like the right way. Some people, they may be really happy with their life and where they're at. And so maybe a 15-year timeline or maybe a 20-year timeline with like a lower savings rate. Like maybe that is your sweet spot. And so I would say like, don't discount the principles of the FIRE movement or Dave Ramsey or David Bach. He's my favorite of like the old school OGs, but whoever the person is that's kind of giving out advice about financial independence or frugality, like don't just throw the baby out with the bathwater because you're thinking like, oh, well, those people who follow that movement, they're too extreme. Like, well, you don't have to do it extreme. Like you can just do it at a half pace of what those people are doing it. And so like, the same way that you may follow somebody on Instagram who's like a fitness influencer, you don't have to do every one of their workouts, but maybe you'll do like half of their workouts, or maybe you'll just get a little bit of inspiration to do like one of the new techniques in the gym that they're doing. So like if you just get a little bit of inspiration and it just gets you past that average point where like most Americans aren't going to be able to retire, it seems like they're going to have to work their whole life. Like just be okay with like figure out what your timeline is when you want to retire and be open to the possibility that it doesn't have to be bleak just because there's a lot of bad news out there. in the media. Well, it's also because there's a lot of spending habits that aren't very mindful and people who are just going along with the masses and not really trying to find solutions. If you have a growth mindset and you are interested in breaking out from the pack, you can do it. You can do it on your timeline. It doesn't have to be a super aggressive timeline, but there's a lot of people out there who you can probably model what they've done. If you just go out, if you seek, you can find it.
Awesome. That's Jeff with the net worth of $1 million. Thanks for coming on the show today.
Thanks. It sounds more official when I hear you say that for some reason.
Wave my wand. I'm the official millionaire mentee. I love it.
It's ordained.
Congrats, buddy.
Thanks.
Thanks for listening to the Millionaires Unveiled podcast with Jace Mattinson. For more stories, investment opportunities, and information, check out our website, millionairesunveiled.com. See you next time when you'll hear from another everyday millionaire.